Just going to give people a couple of minutes to connect here with us, and then we will get started. Just give me 1 second to make sure everything looks good. So for you who are here, let's get the ones that are technically a bit more challenged. I'm one of them. Just a couple of minutes to get back in here, or get in here, I should say, and then we can get started. You can ask questions throughout the whole webinar. You can do that through a Q&A button somewhere on your screen. So feel free to do that while we go through the presentation. If there's any questions you have, we'll get to them at the towards the end of the webinar, but I'll definitely be able to follow all of those. You should be anonymous also to each other. You can ask questions without worrying about who's seeing them. Only I can see them. So take this chance to really ask questions if you have any about, the topic of the day. But let's just give people another minute or two. I think we're basically at where we should be. Well, there's already a question. Oh, okay. Somebody's grateful for the webinar. That's very sweet of you. You are very welcome. We do appreciate that. We do also believe in education at Hatch. It's very important. This journey is a huge investment, if you will, in emotions, time, finances. So we definitely want people to be educated. So I appreciate you appreciating that, because we just try to spread the word about how this is all going down and what it means. So I thank you for that. All right, well, great. Well, let's jump in. I think that we're basically, somebody's coming in here. Let's just give them another second. Just keeping a bit of track here, but I will finish on time, I promise. So you can all go back to your evenings, days, mornings, work, leisures, whatever you have today. But I'm happy to see that there are so many of you here. That's awesome. All right, well, let's jump in, and I'm sure that the rest can come in as we speak. All right, let me just open up my little presentation here. Let me just turn down my other screen so we don't accidentally see anything else in terms of people. Let's do that. All right. I hope you can see a nice little presentation with a couple of amazing people on there, surrogates and intended parents. I'm just gonna say that I answered this question. Awesome, thank you. Okay, I say this for every webinar, but I will say it again. This is some of the reasons that we do all of this work here at Hatch, is these people on these pictures, which are our amazing intended parents and surrogates. And I just love these pictures and what they embody in terms of, this journey, the bond between intended parents and surrogates, this kind of real partnership in going into this journey together and creating something amazing together, which is obviously a happy, healthy child. So I just want that to kind of go with that. I'm just gonna I see a question here or something. I'll definitely get back to that one. So please hang on, and we'll get to that one. All right. So let's just jump forward a bit. I want to talk about today's schedule, if you will. Sounds very formal. But what we will be speaking about today, I'm just going to keep track of the time here as well, because I'm bad at time management. Always a good trait in an employee. This is what we're talking about today. Introduction, just shortly about Hatch and PFCLA. I just want everybody who ever speaks to us to know what we are, who we are, and what we are about. Well, I'll make it very brief though. So we're going to focus on the other aspects of, first of all, what does a match time mean? We throw around this concept of match time. And I know that we are all in different stages of research. So for somebody, it might be a very hilarious concept of speaking about what is even a match time. But there are people that are actually very new to this, and I want to give them the chance to understand, when we throw around match time here and match time there, what does that actually mean? What are we referring to? But then we'll get to the juicy part of understanding what impacts agency matching times. And it's not a perfect list. Like, there's many things that impact agency matching times. We would never get through all of them in one sitting. But I focus on a couple of things that I usually think about when we speak about match times. So we'll talk about, why does a match time look a certain way? What does that mean for an agency? What's behind that, etc. We will also talk a little bit about how we perceive match time, because match time today, which we'll discuss a bit later, is all about start to match. But there is also a different aspect to match time, which is start to pregnancy. So from match to pregnancy, what does that mean versus just, from start to match itself? So let's discuss that topic and concept a little bit. I think it's a bit challenging. I mean, it's challenging the status quo of what when we're talking about match times, and we're all about challenging status quo at Hatch when it makes sense for the process and for the quality or success or whatever. So let's talk about that a bit and see if I can challenge you about how you think about match times versus matched pregnancy or live birth even. And then we can do some Q&A. I just changed that last sentence. So we will not be asking a match specialist about that. We will be asking me, an experienced intended parent, about this process as well in terms of match times and what that means. And on that note, this is me. I'm Edwin. I'm the international manager here at Hatch and Pacific Fertility Center. But I also work with many of our domestic intended parents as well, actually. But I tend to focus more on, the events, conference, business side, more on the international aspects of our agency and clinic. And more importantly, I'm a father through surrogacy, through egg donation as well, and IVF. So I've been through that twice as an international intended parent, adding that extra fun layer of being thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away in another country. So I'll take any questions on the personal journey as well. I'm very open about it. So don't feel like you can't or you shouldn't. I'm all about questions and education. All right, let's talk about Hatch and PFCLA a little bit first. So I just want you to know who we are and what we do. So Hatch has been around for 35 years. So we're in our 35th year as an agency, which is amazing. I mean, I'm 36, so this agency was just created a year. I was 1 year of age. So it's kind of amazing to be here today. First donor agency to exist, which is amazing, pioneered by somebody amazing called Shelly Smith. If you are somewhat in this agency sphere, clinics, etc., you probably know her name. If you care about legacy and longevity of agencies. One of the first surrogacy programs as well, been around for 35 years, clients from all over the world today, 55 countries so far and counting, thousands of happy, healthy birds. And also, we have our own in-house IVF clinic. So on the right-hand side, you also see Pacific Fertility Center there. Pacific Fertility Center is an IVF clinic. A longtime partner of Hatch's, worked very closely together, always liked each other, good communication, good understanding of what we want to provide intended parents and patients. And in the end, that led to us building a program together, actually. So today we do programs with Pacific Fertility Center exclusively in terms of our guaranteed birth plans, our plans that we really buckle down and say to intended parents, like, let us take care of the whole journey beginning to the end. Let's have that team spirit with agency and clinic knowing each other, working together every day together, being able to communicate smoothly and effortlessly. Let's do that with a really clear pricing, including both the agency and the clinic, because pricing is infamously untransparent in surrogacy. To some extent, the IVF as well, but I feel like it's more of a kind of issue in surrogacy. I just wanted to bring together plans that would really get intended parents to where they want to go, which is a happy, healthy baby. And doing that with that reassurance that we got both sides here. We can control that chain. We have accountability, so we can take care of that journey all in one place. And just having doctors in-house, obviously being an amazing, amazing feature here at Hatch and PFCLA, because we can actually draw the experience of the doctors very early in our process of accepting donors, surrogates, and throughout the whole process, which is just amazing. They're at our beckon, if you will. I think they won't like hearing that, but we can communicate with them directly. We're on the same team's channels. We're WhatsApping each other. Like, we can really, really utilize their expertise in the process of screening, accepting donor surrogates, working with our intended parents, matching, and everything beyond. And that has really had a great impact on the agency and in terms of success, etc. So that's who we are, and that's the vision that we have for our clients and for our intended parents, and wherever they might be, that's the kind of all-inclusiveness that we want to bring to this, and that kind of spirit of taking care of you, not only as an agency, not only as a clinic, but as one team to go through this together. And this is a little bit background on just the agency here. All of our staff are actually been through this ourselves, so which is an amazing also experience. I think our lovely women at this agency, who are actually in majority, they have done over 70 surrogacy journeys themselves as surrogates across, I think, 20 plus agencies. So there's an immense amount of experience. We've done about 10 to 12 intended parent journeys as intended parents across probably 5 to 6 agencies, if not more. So that's really all the experience we bring here, in addition to like our professional experience, to really make this about a great journey, professionalism, personalized approach, that middle ground. That's really where we want to be. And I think that helps with having our own experience as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about Hatch and PFCLA. Hopefully that was short, as I promised. So let's talk a little bit about match time. This is a little timeline that we utilize usually during our consultations to really give people an understanding of how this process works. And I think it's a great way to just kind of give a great visualization and explain the process, especially for those maybe early in the process when it's hard to grasp all the moving parts. But what is then a match time? Like, what do people mean by saying that? A match time is the time from when you start with an agency, you partner with them, get on a match list, basically, of the surrogate match list, to the time that you actually match with a surrogate. So the surrogate match. So that is what is referred to a match time. When I start with your agency, how long will it take for me to have a match of a surrogate? This can also be interpreted differently, though. So let's say with Hatch, a matching time is when you have a finalized match with a surrogate. It's not looking at a profile. It's not having the first interview. It's not considering each other. The match time is a finalized match when you've done all of those steps. You've reviewed the profile of the surrogate. You've decided that you want to speak to her. You've sent her a letter from you. She's read this letter. She wants to meet with you. You want to meet with her. We have a meeting facilitated by the agency. And after that meeting, after you had some time to think, you decided that you want to work together, and the paperwork is finished to have that match. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the match time, because the agencies use that term differently. So that's the match time at Hatch to that finalized match. So ask the agency, what does that match time mean? Is that a formalized match, final match, profile, meeting, etc.? Ask questions. But that is what is usually referred to as a match time, basically, if that makes sense. Nice little arrow there, I thought. So the time from match to sign up to surrogate match. So I just wanted to go through that. I know it's very basic in many ways, but I think it's kind of confusing because we do use a lot of terms in this kind of field, and it sometimes can be confusing as a new intended parent. I know that I definitely did not understand all of the lingo, if you will, and I wish somebody would explain it to me in a very basic way. So there's the basic explanation of what that is. Okay, but let's talk about the real kind of core of this webinar today. So there are different considerations. Like there are some major considerations in terms of what impacts agency match times, and there are a ton of other things. So I'll mention a couple of them here. I don't even think it's 5, actually. I think it's 4 or 3, but that's beyond the point. So let's look at a couple of them. So one of the first things that will impact the agency match time is the number of journeys that the agency does. So every year, for example, or if you want to break it down in months, so it depends on the volume, what makes sense to kind of break it down in. But let's say, for example, the yearly number of journeys. So how many people do on a yearly basis work with the agency? How many births do they have? How many do the parents want to work with them? What that means really is kind of how attractive is the program for intended parents. A program can be attractive for many, many reasons. Sometimes it's because there's a very short match time, and that attracts some intended parents. Sometimes it's about the robustness of the screening or robustness of the kind of interview process of the surrogate. Sometimes it's about the robustness of safety and financial terms from the agency side to the intended parents. There might be a lot of different things that attracts intended parents, but that gives you an indication of kind of, how many people want to work with this agency. That will impact their matching time, depending on how many journeys they do each year, or whatever makes sense to break it down. Something that is very obvious, but is also very, very important is surrogate recruitment. So how many surrogates do work with the agency? How many do they efficiently, if you will, recruit and attract as surrogates to the program? And there's plenty of ways to attract surrogates to an agency. It should be a mix between, benefits and motivation, humanitarian approach, a good personal connection, etc. But that does matter. It's not just about ads. It's not about how many can you reach in terms of ads. It's about building a program that through the application process of a surrogate, she feels seen, heard, respected, gets her questions answered, even if that's one question or 100 questions. So all of that builds the agency's attractiveness in terms of the surrogates. And that obviously will show off in terms of how many people decided to work with the agency as a surrogate. Something else that is important for recruitment is how many surrogates actually return for a subsequent journey after having finished a journey with the agency. So there's one thing that you have to go out there as an agency and you have to recruit and find people, and you got to screen them and make sure they're great for the program, that you as an agency are great for them. But there's also about building that experience throughout the journey, that the surrogate says after a completed journey that, yes, I want to come back. I'm ready again to go at it. And I want to go at it with you again as a surrogate. And I think that's one of the best really receipts, if you will, you can get as an agency if a surrogate having an amazing journey with you, is definitely that they're coming back and they're excited for a second or third or fourth journey even with you as an agency. And obviously it impacts the matching times in the sense that you have people returning back instead of having to go out there and try to recruit and find surrogates and get them into the program. So we talked a little bit about the application process, etc. That's something that Hatch has worked continuously on for a long time to really make that experience positive for applicants and just make it easy to go through the next steps and work through those steps of the application process. And that also makes it easier to understand the process and feel confident in moving on, that there's not these big obstacles between different steps. And that also makes people more likely to go through the process and then become a surrogate, adding to the number of surrogates and decreasing the number of the matching time itself. This probably should be preceded by the third consideration, but I have it as a third one. So ignore the numbers. There's no internal kind of ranking of this. Surrogate screening. So how an agency screens a surrogate applicant will have a huge impact on the matching time. So once again, we'll shift the perspective a little bit from start to pregnancy rather than start to match. But if you look at the traditional kind of sense of like from start to match, that is heavily impacted by the surrogate screening process. So what is the agency's process of screening? What steps does that entail? To what extent does the agency go out there and really verify documentation and go through additional steps that might not be seemed as very necessary or needed, but still is a great way to find great candidates. So just as an example, so with Hatch, with our clinic now, so we do two very imperative things for us in the surrogate screening process, which we're very lucky to do because we have our own clinic that can act as the medical provider and do some of these things. So the first thing is a medical records review at the application stage with our chief medical officer, not with the agency. So this is quite unparalleled to be able to do this at the application stage. This adds on to the pressure of how many surrogates would be accepted to the program. But what it does is that it really identifies any potential issues at a much earlier stage than to having to match within the parents. And once again, match time then looking potentially better just for them to find out later that she's actually not medically qualified by the doctor. So this does absolutely impact matching times, that when you add on steps to the match process, to the screening process, when you add on these additional steps to ensure a higher quality, a higher qualification, a safer process, you are effectively, probably, and most likely declining or disqualifying more candidates in an earlier stage. And that's going to visually impact your match time as an agency, even if it's going to make the steps after better. In terms of just looking at agency in the traditional sense, that's going to impact the match time. So all of these things, how much time and effort the agency puts into screenings and how strict they are, if you will, that does impact the match time a lot, because that would either disqualify surrogates to move forward or qualify surrogates to move forward. And the field is quite unregulated for the agencies. So there is the American Society of Reproductive Medicine with their guidelines. There's the Society of Ethics of Egg Donation and Surrogacy in terms of their guidelines, which Hatch is a member of both. But it's still not required, right? It's not a required process, required to be part of those organizations or follow their advice or guidelines. So it's really important to ask the agency in terms of, how do you screen, what's the screening process, what steps are there for that, and also try to kind of be a bit critical. It's one thing to show you a slide of how that's done, but like, is that truly the screening process? And for many small agencies, that is a really challenging thing because it does take a lot of time, effort, and skills and structure, etc., to go through that when you're talking about volume. So that also impacts agency match times as well. There's also a little wild card I wanted to add on there, which is rematches. So an agency match time, we usually talk about, from start to match of a surrogate, but we not as often talk about like, how does that match time impacted by people already having been matched and now they needed a rematch. And that could be for different reasons, right? So that kind of volume of how many people will actually, depending on how the agency operates, would have to go back, get in the front of that queue again, which is most likely the case, and then being matched again. How many are those intended parents? Because that will impact the amounts of matches the agency can do with new intended parents that are also on that list. That also brings me to the question of volume in terms of surrogates. So a lot of the times with smaller agencies, you can see shorter matching times. But what it also means is that there are probably fewer amount of surrogates. There are also fewer amount of intended parents, of course. But the thing with that is that even if you could get a time-year match, if you will, in the traditional sense, when you go back to rematch, you really have to hope that that volume holds your preferred surrogate match according to your specifications, preferences, etc. So sometimes when you go back and you got a rematch, you might find yourself waiting for months on end to have that person show up because the agency only has so many they screen and accept for each month. While with larger agencies, you can usually have a better flow of continuous screening and acceptance of surrogates. So you always have that batch of whatever it might be, 20, 30, 40 surrogates that are ready to not only be matched with new intended parents, but also be rematched. And that fits the criteria of that intended parent. So they don't wait months, rather weeks to rematch again. So that also impacts the overall timeline in terms of the match, and rematches is also worth considering in terms of just time overall. Like I said, we tend to focus a lot on the timeline just based on A to Z and not so much about what happens if. And those if scenarios are not uncommon and they do impact the match time as well. And rematches is one of those things that directly impact the agency's match time based on that. So I know it says 5, it should say just considerations, major ones. So I'll forgive you for that. But these are a couple of things you should think about. And when you look at agencies, and as a blanket overall in all of this, which I think kind of comes true, is a simple demand and supply. So how many, people are in need of surrogacy, how many intended surrogates are ready to match. Like it's a simple demand and supply in many ways. That lays like an overall blanket on all of this. But these are a couple of the more specific kind of considerations in terms of the agency match time. Sorry. So I hope that was helpful. I also do want to talk about not only like what makes the agency match time, in a certain way, but also kind of what makes maybe the match a bit shorter or longer, right? Because when we speak about a match time, we usually either use an average or a rough number for how that looks. I would say the agencies that have more volume should really be better at predicting those match times because there's data about it. So you have X amount of matches you can kind of go back to and compare with. It's never a perfect number though, but it gives you that chance. But there are other things that, when we speak about match times that we need to focus on, like there are still things that can make this either longer or shorter. One of the most prominent things is the preferences of the intended parents. If somebody comes to an agency and has a long list of requirements and specifications, ranging from, geographical location to age, etc., it could be a lot of different things. That will take the pool of available surrogates and make that smaller and smaller until hopefully there is somebody there for you. But the likelihood of that happening in comparison to somebody saying, hey, I want somebody happy, healthy. I think all of us intended parents, prospective parents think about, drinking and drugs, etc., which I know might be weird to ask your agency, but we get it. You're going to have a baby carried by somebody else. We'll give you that reassurance in the work that we do that that's not the case. But happiness, openness, healthiness, just having a great surrogate, that's going to match you probably much sooner because that pool of surrogates is not going to shrink because of these are the only ones in California. These are the only ones within the age range of 25 to 27. Like as more open you can be with your criteria, the shorter the match you're going to have, most likely. And there are many other things like that you can consider. But it's not only about your preferences, it's also about how good is the agency in understanding your situation and your specifications. Because it's not just about finding the next available surrogate and saying this is the next available intended parent, go at it and try to have a great match. It's about understanding people's wishes, wants, and needs. And that is inclusive of things like how do we think, values, what do we really look for in another person, a lot of different things that might be important for the match. So at Hatch, for example, it's a hand-curated matching process, which has not only led to 9 out of 10 of intended parents matching with the first profile, hence timelier process, quicker match, if you will, because you don't have to go back. But just like that understanding of like that a match will hold over time, that is also really important. So the agency understanding what do you need in terms of your own preferences, what is a great match, legal fit, doctor requirements, etc. If an agency really hones down on understanding these things before you are presented the match, you could have a timelier match because you don't have to go back, you don't have to decline, you don't have to repeat the process. Rematches, we talked about that, and I do really want to talk about that last word, repeat, repetitiveness. I can even pronounce that today. That is really, really important because that makes your match longer. Even if you on paper have matched, you go forward, you're going to have a certain matching time. But if you repeat steps of that process, going back over and over again, and I just had a consultation today with the person that had 4 surrogates in terms of matches, and she's still not seeing a successful pregnancy, which is super tough to go through. That repetitiveness just eats up time, and that makes things longer as well. I see that somebody had a question. I'll just jump in. I'm sure you need a break from my voice droning on. Okay, I see that question. No worries. I'll get to that at the end, I promise. No worries. And I will also actually I would actually encourage you to email me. The email is in the bottom of this presentation, so if you stick around a little bit. So if you please email me, I don't think at all that that's going to be an issue. There's many other things to consider, but please do send me an email if you don't mind, and I'll get you in touch with our amazing intake team so you can do an application first, etc. So please do that, and I promise to help you and hold your hand through that. But there's many professions, there's many lifestyles in terms of being a candidate, so don't rule yourself out too soon. Okay, thanks everybody else for hanging on there with that little internal monologue. Okay, so repetitiveness. Let's talk about this issue because that does impact a lot of things. So what I was thinking about this area of match time, etc., is that just as in my own journeys, having gone through this, we tend to focus so much on when do I start that journey and when will I be matched? Like we're so focused on that we tend to forget another very important concept, which is the time from start to pregnancy, or even beyond the time to from start to live birth, right? But let's kind of make it more timelier and easier to understand here. So the perspective of actually having a match start and then going all that way to that pregnancy is really important to think about. And the reason why it's important to think about is because from your official match and then moving forward through all of the additional steps that it takes to get to a pregnancy, which the ones who are well researched know that there are actually a couple of steps that take anywhere from 2 to 3 months to complete after you even have a match. And what is important with that is that when you get to that point of having your surrogate match, it becomes a game of, do we need to repeat? How prepared are we? We talked about preparedness of the agency, accuracy in understanding your situation, etc. This is really where all of that will show. So when you go inside of the match and you have a match, did you see one profile? Did you have to look at 2, 3, 4, 5 profiles to find a candidate that's even relevant for you? Because that's something that's going to be really time consuming and annoying. Like when you've put down your specifications for the agency and they're still showing you profiles that make no sense. That's really frustrating, in addition to adding timeline. But let's say that that's relatively smooth, right? Let's say it's a hatch process, if you will, like 9 out of 10, match with the first profile, so they're ready to go. If anything happens at this stage, that you need that rematch, so you've seen the profiles, etc., you've gone through the match meeting, you had a chat with that person, but you're not a great fit. You just do not feel the right feeling. The gut feeling is wrong, like something that's happening is just not the right fit for you. You have to go back and you have to look at a new profile. That can be quick. That can also be slow. Once again, we're back to how many surrogates are ready to match. What are their profiles? Is there a wide variety of different states, backgrounds, etc., that you can look at? So maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But even with the quicker profile, you still have to look at that profile. You have to send that surrogate a letter. She reads that letter. You have to set up a call for that, complete that call, etc. So even just with a simple additional step like that, you're probably looking at anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks additional time in your timeline. So already here, your very focused approach of like, when do I start the journey and when do I match is becoming a little bit irrelevant. It's 2 to 4 weeks, right? I think all of us can live with that variation, but it's already starting to become a little question of like how long things will take. If we do work on this successfully, either the first time around or after that second time, we have the surrogate screening part. So surrogates will be medically pre-approved by a doctor, first and foremost. With Hatch, we do medical pre-approval with our doctors at the application stage. We do allow our doctors 72 hours to just do additional assessment if they need to kind of look at it again. But at some clinics, we're talking about weeks. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks is not unusual. We've seen that before for a pre-approval. And then after the pre-approval, the surrogate will travel to the clinic. So scheduling that timeline, when can you go, when can you be there, and be screened by the doctor and the clinic. So let's say at this stage, what we see from Pacific Fertility Center with agencies providing surrogates to us, we see about 75% clearing the medical screening. With Hatch surrogates, we see about 98% clearing the medical screening, because not only do we do the medical records review, we also do a uterus lining assessment. So done locally where she lives, because we're a clinic, we can give her an order for that. She can go there, we can see the results, we can look at that and identify any issues, polyps, fibroids, thinning of the uterus lining, etc. So at this stage, if you do have a disqualification for a surrogate, which my colleague Matt had 3 times actually happen to him in his surrogacy journey, you're looking at going back again. So you're going back, you're looking at a new profile, you're completing all of the work again that we said, you have another doctor pre-approve, or the same doctor ideally pre-approve, and then you pencil in that, schedule that travel again, that screening, etc. And I'm thinking I'm being a bit conservative here with this one, but 1 to 2 months additional time is not what you're looking at again. So like you're going back again, you're repeating that process. I do think it can be actually quite much longer, but I didn't want to exaggerate too much. I'd rather be a bit conservative. But going through all of that again, especially if your clinic is really spending that 4 to 6 weeks in pre-approval, that's going to really, really eat up your time. So then we're seeing again that now we actually our matching time from the beginning doesn't mean much if you're adding on these additional steps. When you go through legal, if there's any issues in legal, sometimes hard to anticipate, but there shouldn't be a lot of issues there. But if the negotiations, if you want to call them that, break down, you go back again, you're adding on another timeline again on top of that. Let's say you pass this step here, like you go back, you do all of that again. I think it's once again quite conservative, but you add on that time again. And then the last part over here is that if you do go back and you do a embryo transfer, let's say your doctor says, usually after 3 transfers, the doctor would say switch, sometimes after 2, but I think it's more common to go through 3 transfers at least, unless there's anything other, of course, that motivates a switch. Then you're really going back. Then you're going back again to that. I mean, just the 3 months of like screening, contracting, meds, and embryo transfer, those are 3 months. Give it another month to go through that matching process, etc. Once again, I think I'm counting conservatively, at least another 3 to 4 months on top of that. So why I wanted to visualize this is because this is really not always about the match time in that sense. It is about how can you as an agency give me that reassurance that from match, I will be going through these additional steps with confidence, with success to reach the pregnancy stage. And that should really also be a focus, which I think we're missing today in this field. We're so focused on that, putting our intended parents' dreams and hopes on that number of start to match. Let's shift that perspective, like how soon can I get to a pregnancy and with what success can I do that? I think that's really important as well in this journey. But I hope this gives you some perspectives on kind of like how you should think about it and also how it impacts you actually to go through those additional steps. I had disqualified surrogates as well at medical screening. I had transfers fail. I had to switch surrogates. I had all of that happen to me more or less. We didn't break down in legal, so I guess that was great. It does eat up your time. It does eat up your emotions. It does tear on your patience. So use both perspectives. If start to match is so important, go with that as well. But try to add this time to pregnancy aspect to it as well, and how this here would work and what risks you run in that field as well. I see a lot of questions, I hope. So let's look at that now. So I hope that was helpful. I have a couple of questions I want to look at, but I did mention to one of you, feel free to email me. So there's my email, edvin@hatch.us. So please feel free to do that. And if you're an intended parent, want to chat, have a meeting, email me or go to our website and fill out the form there. If you're very technically advanced, scan this to book a call as well. But we would love to have a chat either way, even if you're a potential surrogate, intended parent, or whatever. Would love to have a chat one-on-one and understand what you need and what you want, and see if that fits with Hatch and if we can give you the journey that you deserve. All right, let's look at the questions. I'm excited. Let's see what we have. May you share how long was one journey? So do you mean my personal journey, or kind of like if you look at that timeline? I mean, generally, if you look at this timeline, like this was the Hatch process, if you will, when I showed you the timeline from start to finish. So we're looking at like from start to finish, usually about 22 months from start to birth. But like I said, you've seen all these kind of moving parts, personal timeline. Okay. So I had two very different journeys. My first journey was extremely choppy. I had match breaks. I had failed transfers, I think 3 or 4 of them. I had an early miscarriage, put me back to the start again. So I had a lot of things go wrong in the first journey to just get to the pregnancy stage, which once again, to my point. So probably the first time around, I probably had a 2.5 to 3 year journey the first time. The second time around, to instill some hope in that very dystopic description, I had one match, I had one embryo transfer, I had one happy, healthy birth, no disqualifications, and that was it. So that journey was probably more at about that 22 to 24 month mark, which I think once again shows you that going back, repeating really is a time consumer. And it doesn't just have to be about timeline, it can be about costs. The reason for my long journey in some extent was costs. I didn't do a fixed fee plan. I had a variable pay-as-you-go approach to the journey, which was more common back then and still is the norm in how it's done. And I just did not anticipate all of those issues, and I had to take a break financially. So hence the 2.5 to 3 year journey the first time, 22 to 24 months journey the last time. My last journey was with Hatch and this clinic, and my first journey was with another agency, but with this clinic. So that was my personal journey time, if you will. Thanks for clarifying that it's personal timeline. Somebody's writing that they're from the lovely country of India. If there's any procedures, is there a way to... Okay, sorry about that rambling. I'm just reading. Okay, so if you're an international intended parent, you can absolutely pursue this journey in the US. That's not an issue. Are there other considerations in terms of home country laws and rules? Yes. Even if it's not legal in your country to do surrogacy, doesn't mean that you can't do surrogacy in the US. Very still available. Hatch has worked with intended parents from India before, so that's totally possible. You cannot bring your own surrogate from India, if you will, not through our program. That doesn't work. We work only with US citizens. We work only with Hatch surrogates that we screen, etc. So that's not the program that we provide. How long you need to stay in the US? You need to stay it depends on your journey. If you're doing your own embryo creation, etc., using your own eggs, if you will, you need to stay for the cycle of IVF. Depending on if you need 1, 2, or 3 cycles, it can range from 3 weeks up towards a month or 2, depending on how many cycles you will go through. But the real stay in the US after is a couple of weeks before the birth of your child. You will have to be in the US, await the birth, spend some time with your surrogate. And after the birth of the child, you need to spend about 3 to 4 weeks in the US to finalize all the paperwork and get you back. Visa process, not our field of expertise. You would have to kind of connect with a visa agent expert to assist you with that. Hatch has very little, if anything, to do with that process, to be honest. In terms of intended parents from abroad getting to the US and requiring a visa for that. It's something we don't really assist with. The clinic, I know, can provide a medical invitation letter when you're a patient of that clinic. But aside from that, like, it's really about finding that information and research yourself. Somebody's asking for my email. You're very welcome for that answer. I see you writing thank you. Somebody's asking for my email address. It's down there, admin@hatch.us. So please feel free to use that and email me. I will help you out. All right. I don't see any other questions for now. Is there anybody who wants to jump in before we say goodbye? This is your chance. I see we have a fair amount of people still on here. So if you want to take the chance to jump in, just ask a question about match times, about surrogacy, my journey, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be related to this topic. I will just stick around for at least a couple of more minutes to see if there's anybody who needs me. So I'll just be here until I see the list clear a little bit of people. If you need to go or you've had enough for today, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope it was useful. I know we're all in different stages of the research we do. So my email is on the presentation. Let me just send it to you here. Let me see. I hope you can see this. Okay, let me just send this here. Okay, that's the email. So yeah, wherever you are in the research, I hope it was useful. Feel free to connect. We have amazing resources. I mean, amazing attorneys we work with after 3 decades here doing this. Doctors, amazing doctors, both at our clinic and others we know. Therapists, psychologists, insurance experts, like, we got the works. So please do stay in touch if you want any help. We're happy to help you as much as we can. I put my email in the chat there. Let me know if you got that one. I don't see any other questions. So if you need to get back to your day or evening, feel free to do so. I appreciate you being here. And I'll just see. Yeah, seems like you got the email. Awesome. Well, all right. Well, then I'll thank you all so much. Have a great day, evening, wherever you are. Stay safe and stay in touch. And wherever the journey takes you, best of luck. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.